Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Goat Marketing Show. We have a little bit of a different look this week. We've hijacked it from Doug Foley to give you kind of a behind the scenes look of how we've been using some AI tools here at Giant Goat. Before we get into things, I wanted to talk about something that was kind of on the top of my mind and give a shout out to a friend of mine, Seb Diath. Usually on the Labor Day long weekend, when you're sitting around the campfire, you're talking about what are you going to do for the fall? I can't believe summer's over. School is just around the corner. Who did you draft in fantasy football? But we started talking about AI tools, and I have to give him credit for sharing a couple of really cool ones with me. The first one is called there's an AI for that.com. One word, all lowercase, no spaces. And basically what it is an AI tool aggregator where you can look up virtually anything and find an AI for that. And one of the really cool ones that he shared with me that he found is called Magic Slides. And we can link all of these in the description when this gets on YouTube. But basically what Magic Slides does is it'll take any sort of document or web page or information that you give it and create a full PowerPoint deck with images and talking points and everything like that. And a lot of my job is using PowerPoint, creating PowerPoint and giving presentations using them. And so that is a tool that I'm definitely going to throw into the repertoire. And I wanted to give Seb the credit that he deserves for sharing that with me. But now diving into the show itself, I'm joined by two of my favorite people to work with, John, who is a regular on the show. And we also have Nithya, who I believe hasn't even been on the show since season 1. Is that correct? Way back when you were the moderator?
It's very possible. I may have made a feature once or twice in second season, but I was mostly behind the scenes.
Well, we're really excited to have you back. You're such an important part of our team behind the scenes, behind the camera in a producer role. Because you haven't been on the show in a while, could you give us a little bit of an introduction to who you are, what you do at Giant Goat, and what your role is?
Yeah, so hello everybody again. I'm Nithya Harland, and I've been working as the content strategist since John joined our team. So what that looks like often is meeting with our clients, coordinating social media, calendars, taking a look at different content assets that they've gathered or that we've created for them, and choosing when is the appropriate time to distribute them, what method of distribution is going to be best for that piece of content. And yeah, so what I really love about my role here is you get to have like a very personal relationship with our clients, and really get to know their business and how we can capture it best and communicate it. And then I also love working with these two fine gentlemen. Ben always keeps me on track to make sure I'm getting things out when they need to be. And John has been integral to my position as strategist in making that content come to life and really putting our vision into action. So.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for your kind words as well. And you were spoken highly of across the board, internally and externally with our clients. I did have a couple of questions for you guys. I know working in the content part of marketing, AI probably, I assume, and I've seen it, has flipped your jobs to do a complete 180. And one of the things that was coming to my mind before and thinking of what did I want to talk about in terms of the behind the scenes things is when we get into using AI generated content, you still need to have a balance with that human creativity element of it. How do you specifically balance the use of AI with making sure that you include your human inputs in it? And what do you kind of think the ideal balance is, whether it's a percentage or if you just wanted to speak about it qualitatively? Maybe John, you can go first.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at this one. Yeah, I have been working a lot with GPT and other tools, and I think that in the same way that if you were writing copy for whatever it is, in the same way that you wouldn't settle for something that isn't exactly what you want if you're just writing it yourself, it's the same with when you're having AI do it. So if it writes something and you think, well, that doesn't sound like a human's writing it, or it doesn't sound like the exact tone that we would need for our audience, like it's going back and getting that the desired output that you want. So I guess to directly answer that question, the ideal mix is I'd honestly say it's 50-50. Like you can, it's still in the stage where it is a tool that we're using in the same way that other softwares and other programs are tools that we use to get what we want. Like, so I would definitely say that you still have to be very diligent in how you are assuring the quality of what the AI is producing, and making sure that it still does have that creative element to it, that human element.
And we've even seen recently that in a lot of instances, our clients are the subject matter experts. We can create the content and we can go to AI to help create the content, but neither the AI or us as marketers are experts in the subjects that our clients operate in. And so a lot of times that human input comes from whether the client's briefing us or the feedback that they give on our first round deliverable that really helps us go back and set that context again.
Yeah, that's exactly it too, is like the thoroughness of the context that we get from the experts is still the biggest determining factor in how good the AI content is going to be. So the better input we get, the better results we get out of it. So it's still like very reliant on the human element of using it.
That's
I
awesome.
would completely agree. And I think that's where our relationship with the client and managing our conversations with them, asking the right questions, so that we have those inputs is really integral to having the best outputs. And I think John or Ben has referred to it before. Like it's a great tool. It can help when we have the right inputs, it can output beautifully. But it also can be a great way of just getting a starting point when you have nothing or you're drawing a blank. But at the end of the day, it really does rely on us having asking the right questions and getting the right information for the output to be as accurate or as awesome as it can be.
I love that you said relationships, because last week our prompt of the week was to remember to be human. And it just reminds us to put even more emphasis on developing that relationship with the client and understanding the problems that we need to solve with their service or product, and how we can push that messaging through marketing. So the more you develop that relationship with a client, the depth of that relationship is going to help you get deeper results from what you're inputting into these tools, and from what you're able to deliver from the human side of it. I do have another question. This is probably more for you, Nithya, as we gear up to fill a massive gap in our team when you go on your maternity leave later in the year. One of the questions I wanted to ask is that someone new coming into our team, what advice would you give them in terms of, how would you use AI to help get on board, and how would you even start using AI in a position with Giant Goat?
I think that's a really great question. I think it starts with being curious, because yes, we can always find the time and work out solutions on our own. But what I'm reminded of often by Doug is to look for those efficiencies. Like if there's a way that you can do something faster, better, smarter, we should be seeking out those opportunities. So with that tool you mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, so finding out if there is an AI tool that can speed up a process, and exploring that, learning from each other. I think often, like even though John just started a few months back, like he's opened my eyes to a bunch of AI tools that can create efficiencies in the way I work. So I think being open-minded and curious and learning from each other is the best way to go about that. And I'm also speaking to myself because sometimes I just get set in my ways of knowing how to do something, but you have to explore new options as they arise and as they become available to be able to provide the best service to our clients and make the most of our time.
I
That
love
is
that.
awesome.
Yeah. I would add, like, the one thing that Doug's really good at here, which you touched on, is like learning from other people. And Doug's always looking for, like, watching stuff online and learning about new tools and how to use them and how different prompts to use in GPT and all this different stuff. So I think that if you do really want to get good at this, it's about looking outside yourself and finding the people who are leading the charge here and learning from them. And like you just said at the end there, like, don't take what you do for granted as the only way that you can do it. Like, as these things get better and as they get faster and as they get more comprehensive, like, the things that you have done for the last however many years, like, are going to change and are going to get better and more efficient. And you just have to be willing to step outside yourself and look for those opportunities and try them. And if they don't work, then that's what happens. But usually you're going to get a lot of payoff if you're willing to experiment.
I know I mentioned that AI aggregator tool, but if you were able to get into Doug's notes, you would see an AI aggregator tool of his own, a fully indexed list of basically every AI tool that you can imagine. Both of you kind of just touched on efficiency. And the other point that I would want to add, and specifically in the context of if you're someone who's newly joining a team or joining a small agency, especially one that is open to leveraging AI, would be don't sacrifice quality for efficiency. If you're able to do something faster using AI, it means you should have freed up more time for you to come in and ensure that the quality is still there that your clients expect and deserve. That would be the last point to touch on. Nithya, you also gave John a pat on the back there for being able to teach things about AI. John joined our team 6 months ago, and we were kind of showing him the ropes. And now I feel like I'm also learning things from him about AI, or going to him and saying, how do I do this? Or can you do this for me in AI, and teaching that. So John, you do deserve a pat on the back there. The next question.
I'll just say, I'm going to interrupt you there because I'll say that I like that you guys are starting to use it more and more. And I went into our ChatGPT library today and I saw a new thread that I only knew had to have been Ben who created it, because it was him asking ChatGPT to write an excuse for why his timesheet was late. So I'm glad that you guys are using this more for different things.
Prompt of the week. Yeah, coming up with excuse to give to your finance team when you're 2 hours behind on your timesheet for last week.
We're getting creative here.
Thank you. I'll make sure to wipe the tire tracks off my back there after the call, John, for throwing me under the bus. I'm kidding. I do have a question for you specifically, John, because I've known you for a long time. You have been a writer for as long as I can remember, and you do a lot of writing here for us. What has AI taught you specifically about your tendencies as a writer? And I guess it'd be specifically ChatGPT because that's where a lot of the content comes from. But I have to imagine that your processes and your ability to output stuff has changed in using this, and I imagine fairly drastically.
Yeah, whoa, that's a good question. I had not thought about that before. And
I'll give him a second to think, because I sent them these questions ahead of time, and I've almost changed every single question I've asked from what they were given. So I'll give John a second here.
I think the first thing that came to mind when you said that was how has it changed my writing or my processes? Well, I think the first thing that it did to change my writing, the thing that it's really helped me with is the tone of my writing, because I think that a lot of what I had done before Giant Goat was mostly creative, so it was just me, and or scholarly. That's pretty much the majority of what I'd done. And so like business writing wasn't something that I had experience in. And I think ChatGPT really helped me to um, learn the kind of professional tone that you need when you're writing ads or emails or whatever it is that a business is using as copy. So I've really appreciated that, and I've learned that my writing was probably my writing style. I think if I were to write all of these things, would be very verbose and very flowery, which is definitely not what you need in a lot of the cases that we do right now. So that really helps me to stay on track there. In terms of processes, like I think that the biggest thing that has changed for me is how I think about the organization of writing, and how like when I get something from ChatGPT and I read it back, I think to myself, okay, how could this be organized now in a way that people are actually encouraged to like read through it? How can I like not spoon feed, but how can I create like such a clear journey in getting from the first word to the last word in this that keeps people captivated, is not too long, not too short, like has clear headings, has all these like the different things that your eyes need to be able to stay engaged in reading something. So I think that that's something that I push Chat GPT to do now more, because it was pushing me to do that a lot in the beginning. And I'm saying like, okay, you've written this, now organize it so that it's actually readable, like the highest level of readability, so that someone who maybe knows nothing about this or has no interest in this has now just read like a 500 word article. So I think those are the first two things that came to mind when you said that.
The fact that you led off by saying verbose, I think, is a testament to that being true. Definitely bookmark what you just said, because that sounds like some pretty clippable content. I think a lot of people, especially fellow copywriters, or even people who write, creatively or and that sort of thing. I mean, it's all creative writing, but for people who write more for pleasure than for copy, I think that's a really interesting take on the use of these tools. We are getting close to the 20-minute mark. We should wrap up shortly. I do have one more question, and this can kind of just be a lob up in the air for either of you to answer. But for a behind the scenes show, it would be awesome if one of you could give an example of just a recent use case where you've used an AI tool. Maybe even if it's not ChatGPT specifically. We do talk about OpenAI tools a lot on this show, but just an example of how you've used one of these tools recently to deliver something for either our clients or internally.
Nithya, unless you have something else, do you want to talk about your recent use of Adobe Enhance or Adobe
I,
Podcast?
Oh,
I was
great.
literally going to mention that because in the past, when clients have sent us videos or audio files that are really hard to work with, like often they're sending them from the field because we work with a lot of agriculture clients, which is naturally where we'd want them to shoot because that's where the action's happening. But wind can be a factor. Cars passing by, it's always, you never know what to expect in these clips. And John introduced me to this tool, Adobe Podcast, which has been life-changing as of last week for me. But essentially, you just upload any audio file. So once you finish editing your entire, like finish making all the cuts, clipping everything together, you export it as an audio file and you just run it through this program. And it makes it sound like they recorded it in a studio. Like, I think John had to bring this up because I was mind blown last week. Like, it literally sounds like people are speaking into speakers in a nice, like, soundproof studio. So it has absolutely changed the game for us. We don't have to add all these like overlays trying to edit out the sound naturally. It has been a quick fix and something that I will continue to use for almost every video going forward. So that was huge.
That is a great example. And I can echo that, no pun intended, that the Adobe Enhance is amazing for audio. It blew my mind when John showed me that the first time as well. If you guys don't have any other finishing points, I think this is a great opportunity to wrap up. Thank you everyone for tuning in, or thank you for watching the recording post live show. As always, if you're another agency or you're a marketing team and you're curious about any of the tools that we use or any of the use cases that we talked about, please feel free to reach out. We don't want to keep any of this a secret. We're always open for a conversation. If you think there's anything that we've missed or that we can do better, reach out to us on any of our social platforms or on our website, and we would love to have a conversation. John and Nithya, thank you for your time. Nithya, thank you for being a special guest. I heard you might even be a special guest next week. So that's exciting for us. But as always, thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will see you next week.
Awesome. It's been a pleasure.